if you could talk about the disintegration of communities as really what helps support these families and what keeps lots of children out of poverty.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have all the answers, for why families have become less and less stable, why we've got more cohabitation, more out-of-wedlock childbearing. I mean, there's a giant debate in the literature about whether this reflects some sort of cultural morass, whether, with the media and so on, we've come not to value marriage and family and so on. We've become individualized rather than communal. So it's some sort of larger value changes that have occurred. But other people would say that the best marriage promotion policy would be one that provides a stable, concrete job. The days of my dad worked at his job for 45 years or so. It was a union job. It didn't pay real well, but it was stable enough to support his family. So I think a lot of it has to do with the way work has changed. A lot of these job reports that we've seen lately, we've seen growth in jobs at the top of the income distribution, the high-skilled jobs, and we've seen jobs at the lower end of the income distribution. I think this most recent jobs report showed maybe a third, which is very different than we've seen the last few years. So I think that's a positive sign. Yes?
I'll stand up. I'm a licensed clinical social worker working in an outpatient mental health facility.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed, I work primarily with a child population. Very many of them are in families that meet the poverty requirements. I'm wondering what role you think interventions at the level of providing better mental health care for families, particularly for providers, has, if any. I've noticed that many of the families I work with, parents are struggling with mental health issues, and because of that are unable to earn an income that would put their family above the poverty line.
Right. I mean, the mental health issues among single mothers, for example, are really large. I mean, I've seen estimates that as many as 40% of single mothers on welfare are depressed, clinically depressed. And, they're not very well prepared to take a job, but they're also not especially good caretakers either with those sorts of circumstances. So the question is whether the mental health problem is a cause of being unemployed and being on welfare, or whether being on welfare and so on and not being connected to a larger community is responsible for the depression. And that's not clear. My guess is that they sort of feed on each other. But that's a good point. I mean, some people have even gone so far as saying we need to put a lot more money into mental health for low-income families, because, and when I say that, I mean not only just clinical interventions, but also medical interventions with antidepressant drugs and so on.
Take one more question.
Yes, back there.
You talk about thinking big, but also with the problems with a lot of the policies and interventions are that they're very community-based. Yeah. And I was just wondering, with such a diversified, in the United States, it's very big, and our communities are structured very differently. And how do you envision a thinking policy change that would address all of the different community needs?
Well, I don't know that there is one. I'm not trying to argue that one size fits all kind of thing, and we need to have the federal government sort of bearing down on everyone. What I want is when I say think big, I want us to think that this is something we really want to do, and that it's part of the dialogue, it's part of the discussion, and I don't hear it as part of the discussion very much. And if it's part of the discussion, I mean, we sort of hear it and then we don't really pay attention and we just go on to the next thing. And I don't know the answer to that. I mean, there's not a natural constituency for children. I mean, again, children don't vote. Children don't advocate for themselves. Children aren't responsible for their own plight either. So how do we help them in a way that, and that's where I think we need to put everybody's heads together. And we need to start by actually talking about it. And I think as a country, Great Britain, for example, had a strategic goal to eliminate child poverty altogether. And they had a number of concrete things and a timeline when they wanted to actually accomplish these tasks. And so I think we need to start there. And then we need to bring a lot of people together to see how we can make this happen. There's not one size fits all. There's no silver bullet. There's no single panacea. Just getting everybody married is not going to solve the problem. These are fundamental structural problems that America is going through now to adapt, and it's showing up in all sorts of ways. That's the anthropologist in me. Okay. Thank you very much. Just a second.
As a token of our appreciation for Dr. Lichter's presence tonight, we'd like to present him with this lovely clock that is engraved with the Marjorie P. Hinckley Lecture for 2015. So please join us again in thanking Dr. Lichter for coming.